Hey everyone, shout out to Ronan for the presentation earlier. Really good one. You really enjoyed like the 90s vibe and the game kind of setup that you got there. I'm Cristi Habliuc. I'm a software engineer at EventBrite, and today I want to take it a step further. Meaning how, and Ronan definitely touched on this one, how do you review what the AI is actually writing, or even what the humans are writing? And this is something that I've been working on for the past few months at my company. How can we leverage LLMs to automate code reviews? This is not something new. This is something that GitHub has obviously done with Copilot. You can tag Copilot in your PRs, and it will actually review the code. In my experience, especially for IIS projects, I didn't really like GitHub Copilot. So then it's some different tools that I usually use. One of them is Cursor, and one of them is Codex from ChatGPT, and I try to see how far I can get with that approach. So I'm Cristi Habliuc. I'm a staff IIS engineer. I work at EventBrite in the event listings and transitioning to the checkout team. I've been creating IIS apps for a long time. I've been there from the iPhone 3G onwards. Worked in large companies, scale-ups, startups, freelancer, you name it, I've done it. I'm mostly focused on user experience, performance, clean architecture. So obviously the code that these AI tools are writing has to be good. It doesn't need to just work. And EventBrite, I'm also part of the Mobile Guild and AI Guild. So that's a bit about me. But the most important things, why this whole thing started for us, is that sometimes waiting for a code review can be painfully long. Especially in those periods when there's a lot of things going on in the company. Engineers are running around the clock to fix things, to implement new features. Nobody has time for code reviews. And that could be really painful. So they're sometimes really slow, and as the mobile side, from a mobile side of view, it's even slower because most of our engineering team are actually back and front end, SRE and so on. So the actual mobile engineers are not that many, so code review times are really long. That's not the single issue. Sometimes some things some issues go to production, and it's usually because someone has done a really sloppy code review. So let's see if we can actually change that. These are some of the pain points that I see. You can see like the code reviews just going along. I don't have time for this. Things like memory leaks are kind of hard to spot sometimes, so that's an issue. Performance issues, again, might not be that easy to see them, but it turns out that LLMs are kind of good at that stuff. There's also reviewer bias and some inconsistency. Like if you're reviewing a junior's code, you might be a bit more like change this and that and that. If you're reviewing a more senior engineer, you might be like, this guy knows what he's doing. I'm not going to go that in depth. If you're friends with them and you're just like clogged with work, maybe you'll like looks good to me. Go ahead. And then obviously we touched on the reviewer being unavailable, which causes delays and frustrations and bad dev experience. This is it's not real, but it's like a broad look at how I see the classic code review timeline, which is you create a PR and mark it as ready to be reviewed. You wait until a reviewer picks it up. Then the reviewer has some comments, you address those comments. Wait until the reviewer picks up your PR again to see if things are fixed or maybe they found something else. When you're assisted by AI tools, you can improve a bit the confidence of this pull request. You get faster feedback, and the actual human code reviewers can focus on bigger things. They don't have to like nitpick or find this hard to see issues. So basically you would create a PR, you mark it as ready for review, then an automated review instantly starts up. In a few minutes you will have some comments. You'll make necessary comments or like commits or challenge those comments. And then when the human reviewers comes in, they will actually kind of read the discussion, see that someone already did some reviews, see if they agree or not, and they can just add their own. So it skips a bit, like it's kind of cheating in this chart because there's still some waiting time there, but I would say that the initial thing when you post the review and you get instant feedback, that's really important. So yeah, by the way, if you have some questions, feel free to interrupt me at any time. Let's not try to drag it too long though, but I'm up for a conversation. Because I find that things related to LLM usage is really polarized, and each of us has a different experience. It might have worked for me, maybe it doesn't work for you. It comes down to a lot of things, but mostly it's about these LLM tools not being that straightforward and everything is reproducible. So it kind of, vibe coding, like the name got it right. So what I started doing is integrating Cursor CLI. It's like a standalone agent. It's basically the same one that you write on your IDE, but it runs in a terminal. Similar to how Roland showed us earlier, you can interact with it, you can do whatever you want, but also one of the nicest things that I have found with the CLI tools is the headless mode, is that you can actually not run in interactive mode, not like interact with it at all, but just give it a prompt, it do its job, and then it will exit. And this is really useful in pipelines. So you can add like a code review agent, and it will just analyze the changes, issue comments in the PR, approve if necessary, and so on. So what I thought was have, one of the differences why I don't use Copilot in GitHub is not necessarily because it doesn't cover a lot of things in the iOS realm, but it's mostly that you have to manually ask it to review. It's not automated. So what I wanted is something automatic that could run in a pipeline, and it's not optional. It will run. So as soon as you actually put the PR to be ready for review, it will actually trigger the review. And that review is done through a GitHub action runner. I'll show you in a second how I define the workflow. It uses the LLM agents, Cursor. I also implemented a Codex version because I wanted to compare how are they doing performance-wise, cost-wise, and so on. It uses the PR, the GitHub API to issue comments into the PR. It will cache or have a memory of the past review feedback because it will actually use the same API to read the comments and everything that happened. And it will basically avoid stale comments. If it's something that has been mentioned, it will kind of skip it. Why GitHub Action? Because it's cheap. It's basically free for public repositories, and it's really generous for private repos as well. You don't need the expensive macOS executors. At my company, we use Circus AI, and that can get really expensive with the macOS executors because we use them for running tests, unit tests, UI tests, and so on. So that could get really expensive. But with GitHub Actions, we can actually run it side by side, and it's really a good way to experiment. At some point, probably it will be integrated in a CI, probably not, we'll see. So another thing that it has implicit access to GitHub tokens, so you don't have to do a lot of configuration to actually let it post comments, approve PRs, and so on. It's easy to run, and supports secrets and version pinning and so on. So kind of the review pipeline, step by step, would be the PR moves into ready for review. The GitHub action kicks off. It checks out the code, see the code diff, analyze everything. We assemble the prompt, the agent analyzes and comments, check for any commits. It avoids repeating comments and posts structured results. And posts the structured results in the action itself, so if you want to debug it, you can see whatever happened during that session, so you can actually improve the reviewer. And this is how it looks in action. It's not very different than what GitHub Copilot does. It basically runs and creates comments, it links to exactly where they found that thing, it can actually do suggestions. So no surprises here. Yeah, this is it in action. This is actually a real project in our company. This is how it looks when it didn't find any issues. But you can see that it actually looked into the rules and everything that we have set up. So it's not just LGD and everything. So you do get some peace of mind. At the end of the day, you do get some peace of mind that some things are covered. You still need a human reviewer to actually look at it, but it's really helpful. Yeah, so next I want to take you through a walkthrough of the GitHub repo. I have here a QR code if you want to grab it and follow along, or just have it as a reference for later. I just want to take you through how I set up the workflow. I have some pull requests set up, some responses. We'll analyze what's going on there. Hopefully it's not going to take too long. Yeah, we have some time. Okay, so I created this project. Yeah, and in this project, I have the workflows that I want to show you for the code review. I'm using Cursor for this one, but I also have a version that uses Codex. There are some reasons, some pros and cons between Cursor and Codex. I found that Cursor is a bit more careful. I mean, you can find more issues. You have more extensive rule systems. You can create rules. It automatically picks up the rules that it needs. It's more analytical. Codex is a bit more shallow, but still very, very useful. At the same time, Cursor is using a lot of tokens. So every run, it's maybe 200K tokens. So it can get quite expensive really fast. As compared to Codex, it uses around 60K tokens, but again, it's not that customizable. It's not that it doesn't find so many issues, and also the Codex CLI is still beta. I don't think it's even 1.0, but it's doing the job for at least for experimentation and see how things are going. So just want to take you through this really fast. Like the actual workflow is kind of long, but I'll leave like the project is public. You can just go ahead and use it to I don't know, inspire your own workflows or whatever. So you can see that I named it with Cursor because obviously I have a Codex one as well. It runs a pull request on whenever you're trying to merge something against main. You can definitely experiment here. If you don't want to leave it in main, you can experiment with your own branches. What types, what states the pull request is in is what allows it to be triggered. Initially I had it for review, but then I added a bunch of other stuff. So I will take you through those as well. It obviously needs permissions, pull request in order to post comments, and contents read to read your project. Issues and actions, you don't necessarily need them. They were here. I think I used a template from Cursor's documents for this, so it might have some extra stuff. But some important things are concurrency, which if you're using GitHub Actions, you probably have seen this before. You can actually prevent these things from running in parallel. If you do like quick commits, you figure something was wrong and you add another commit, it will actually cancel out and kill the processes. This is what does it. Then the actual job definition. All of this here is just a configuration of when it's supposed to run. I will take you through this later. It's not that important right now. The only thing that is important is if you might want to have this. So you make sure that only when the pull request is actually ready for review, this will kind of make you pay a little less money, I guess, in tokens when people are creating the PR. It's in draft. I'm not sure how many of you are using draft. Are you using draft mode in PRs? Great. I use them all the time. I find it's really helpful just to like have everything public there, but not ready for review. Nobody needs to worry until I set it to ready for review. So for me, this kind of workflow works very nice. I just turn it to ready for review, and the reviewer will actually start looking at the code. And then the steps are pretty self-explanatory. It does a checkout of the project. Then it installs the cursor CLI. You configure a Git identity. I don't know what's here because it's not used. It would be eventually used if you let it like make changes to your project, but this one doesn't do any commits or any destructive things. Then this is an actual check that the run is still active in case the actual agent is doing some jobs and we cancel the job at some point. We want it to not go ahead and like post comments and everything because it's like we don't care about it anymore. So this is just kind of a thing to identify the run ID and then make sure that while it tries to add comments, it makes sure that it's still, this is actually the latest run and nothing else is being run. I haven't tested this to be honest because I believe this one will actually kill the actual process, but yeah, just to be safe. Yeah, so this is like the variable superseded will actually control if we're actually even going to start this review. You obviously need a cursor API key. You need to go to cursor and like, configure your API key. I use GPT-5 for the model. I find that it's really good at reviewing. I personally use mostly Claude for developing, like the model. But for review, I find that GPT-5 does a good work. And it actually helps us compare it with what Codex does, because Codex is using GPT as well. So this is the fun part. You run cursor agent via the cursor agent command. This actually tells it to go out of interactive mode and just execute the prompt that we're giving. We're selecting the model. We want it to output format text. This is just for logging purposes. You can go to the GitHub action that was being run and check whatever it was doing at the time. But you don't have to. But the default is JSON, pretty hard to read, so you don't really need it. And then, yeah, print. And then it's like a standard, it's like standard prompt. But then we're giving it some context about the actual PR, the actual repository information. And this is a variable that you can also set in your environment, and it will actually block the review if it finds really fatal issues. We're not using that for now. We just wanted to tell us some more about the code. Tells us some clear objectives. Leave very short inline comments, like don't go overboard, don't explain too much. Then the important part is that we do have an HSMD for you to follow some rules. I'll go into that in a moment. And then also some extra information about how to interact with our pull request, which is using GitHub's API, command line API, and then it can get the diff and everything, so it will actually analyze the changes. And it also has ways, yeah, you can get the comments, get the patches, can actually delete comments that it created. Yeah, not so much to discuss here. You can like review it later. But there are some rules that they need to adhere to, and one of them is that it must say like this is a cursor review, and also I added this because we're also using Codex just to be sure which one was used. Yeah, not doing anything. Emojis, you gotta have emojis because it's a LLM. Yeah, some extra thing, nothing too important here. It's just experimenting all kind of things, just to see what works and what not. Blocking behavior again we're not using, and then if this was a blocking review. It will actually state this. Yeah. Okay, so this is the workflow for Cursor. I just want to show you really quick the ages.md file, which I'm not sure how many have heard of it, of ages.md. Okay, so but Cursor rules, you're familiar with Cursor rules? So yeah, for LLMs it's really important how you set up your rules. And you can just like tell it, here's my repo, find what's wrong, or like create a new feature. It will try its best, but the context window is not that big. And if it goes and gets a lot of context for a project, you might end up with very limited space to actually work with. So that's a big issue. And you can help it by creating these rules. Ideally, these rules should not be very complicated or very lengthy. You should keep them like as small as possible, and only the important things should stand out. And this is what I've done in this agents.md. Not something really huge, but just my preference for this repository. The reason why, even though I'm using Cursor, I'm not using rules, I'm using agents.md is because I also added codecs later on, and then I want both to use the same rules. I don't have to like repeat myself over and over again. Agents.md, by the way, is the kind of open source format for rules in like LLM community. Each model has its own system. Like Cursor has its rule sets. CloudMD has Claude has the CloudMD file, but they all kind of recognize agents.md and they use it if they find it. Otherwise, they use their own proprietary formats. Yeah, so as you can see, I'm not saying anything like about linting, anything about kind of nitpicking things. It's really important stuff. So it's really high-level stuff. And this is kind of my preference. So whenever it does a review, this is my preference. If it finds something that is not aligned with this, it will actually signal it, right? Yeah, so you can see I mentioned memory leaks, race conditions, and so on. Another cool thing with Cursor, which other tools don't have, other CLIs don't have, is the CLI.json config. So this is kind of a safeguard. Like Ronan was telling us earlier about having your agent run in a sandbox environment, like in a Docker image or anything, because you're kind of a bit paranoid and wanted to remove RF everything, right? You can actually have, for Cursor, you can actually configure a CLI.json file, and you can have allow and deny permissions of what commands it can run. So you can get pretty expressive with this. And if it tries to do any of this, it will like fail. It won't do it. Yeah. Let's just go through a few PRs that I opened here. So this is a pretty like Hello World project, but then I created some PRs about some things. This was like a simple change, adding a list of nodes for like a note-taking project. And this is what, let me dislodge it. And this is how it actually ran and commented on my code, right? I did mention in the agents.md that I don't want new files to have that header comments and everything. So it actually signaled this. Then it detected that this is like a mock data here, and it recommended that I use like a debug statement so that this doesn't make it into production. Then it noticed like a view that doesn't have UI tests, so it recommended having UI tests. And then it had like a summary of what it did, right? Then, let me see. I added a new comment, and this is where it's kind of get this interesting that these tools are not deterministic in any way, so you're not sure what they will actually output. One time they might have some things for one PR, and you run another commit to fix one thing, and then it finds other things, and it's like, hey, by the way, yeah, I know I fixed that one, but there's another issue I just saw here, you know? And that's mostly because, again, the context window, they don't have that much room to operate, so it's definitely something to improve on. So this one sees a high severity issue. It's pretty much the same thing that was earlier, but this time it's higher severity. Yeah, so this was one of them. Let me see another one. You can see these labels that I added here: review with while in draft and review with codex. And this is something that I skipped earlier in the workflow. But these PRs, let me see. Requests, labels. So I created these two labels, review while in draft and review with codex, just so I can have more control on the PRs themselves. If you set this label on a pull request, it will actually review it even if it's in draft mode. And this one, if this is set, it would review with codex, it won't review with cursor, and vice versa. If it's not set, it would review with cursor, but not with codex. So this is kind of a simple way to actually make sure you use the right rules. So for this one, let's see. This was still like the first one I ran with the cursor review. And then I added the review with codex. And I think I made a typo. Because I think in the codex workflow definition, I also had it like cursor review, so it's still set. But I think it's currently solved in one of the other pull requests. But this one was actually testing it being in draft mode. If you want to look at a different one. Oh yeah, I think this one is interesting. So this pull request, I actually duplicated it. I put it in another branch and ran it with just codex, just so we can compare how codex actually analyzes the pull request. And it's found one logic issue and test coverage request, and just an improvement. So you can see that it kind of said the same thing, but it's not that obtrusive. And it found something else, like it found the ID is not optional and encodable. So you kind of need to get like really careful with the rules, what you wanted to focus on. This is kind of nitpicking a bit. And then the codex one is pretty much the same thing, but just using the different labels. Since I'm looking at it, I can just show you the other things. So I wanted to run the code review whenever these actions happened, ready for review, for example, but then I switch it to open and everything. But then I still wanted to take into account if it's draft or not. So if even draft is false, or I added the review while in draft, and then this one uses review with codex, the other one review with cursor. Yeah, not many differences here. If you have any questions, like feel free to.
Yeah, I have a quick question.
Sure.
So you use only one of them when you review the PRs. Have you tried using both of them to see how they compare, like in parallel for the same?
For the same PR.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can do that, but keep in mind that it will actually read into the previous. So whoever, like, if one, I prefer to do it in two separate pull requests because it can get polluted and it can take instructions from the other comments. So if, let's say, cursor had the chance to run first, it left some comments on the PR, then codex comes in and reads whatever cursor said because it reads the conversation on that pull request, and it will actually not say the same things or like focus on something else because that was already being handled. So you can't actually kind of see the same PR, but you can see it very easily if you have like two mirror PRs and just run one of them on one PR, the other one there, and just compare the comments. So this is what I did for this.
And yeah, I have another question. You mentioned several times the context, that it's important, that it's focused, and that. Do you have some strategy for how to reduce that context so that it can use it more efficiently?
Yeah, so for this kind of tasks, I don't think there's many strategies to do, but when you're actually building, when you're writing code with LLMs, there are things that you can take, action that you can take. For example, you can not run the conversation too long, because as you run it longer and longer, all of these messages pile up, and let's say you're asking like, give me 10 ideas to improve this code base or something like this, and it will actually list them. If then you decide to go with an idea, it will actually take into account the other ones as well, so it kind of pollutes your context window a bit. So if you want to like get some ideas, run it in one chat session, and then open a new chat with that idea, and like let it focus just on that one thing. And this is something that I found really useful with LLMs. If you focus on one thing, like tell it to plan something, give me like 5 tasks to work on that, and then for each task I create a new chat, and it will actually do a way better job if it's focused just one thing and not focused on the other things as well.
Okay, and I guess smaller commits as well.
Yeah, always smaller commits. Yeah, that's also useful for human reviewers as well. As the PR get longer, it will like spit out pretty much nonsense there. I mean, it will focus on a couple of things. It might catch some things, but it's not as useful as it would be if it's like more focused and smaller pull requests.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Let me see everything here. So I show the workflow definition. The differences with the codex workflow, not that many, is just the codex one has a different like installation and login. Not a big deal, but maybe it would be interesting to show it. So once you install it using npm, and then if you have to manually log in. So it's not just using the API key, you have to like log in with it. This is the recommended way of logging in for Codex. Again, Codex, like the CLI, is not that mature, so it shifts a lot, and you should probably have like pinned this to a version or something so that it doesn't break your pipelines. But like for experimentation purposes, it's good. You'll find out when it breaks. Let's actually see a couple of runs and compare them. So let's see the cursor one. So you can see that it's stepped through the steps in the workflow definition, and the interesting part is this one when it performs the code review. And this is the command that I gave it. You can expand it and see everything, including like everything. I'm not sure if you picked that up, and there was some templating going on in that workflow. You can see that the prompt is actually populated with real data from the PR. And then, because I told it to output text, you could actually see what it did. So one thing that I usually do with rules, and I think is really useful, is to tell inside the rules, tell the agent that's reading the rules to actually say like, I read this rule, I'm applying this rule. And so you can see that it says that I read HSMD and pulled the PR request and blah, 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 did everything. And then, yeah, some more details. So if something goes wrong, you can actually go into the action and like review what it did, so you can actually go back and fix it. If this is not helpful or something, like let's say the authentication failed or something, and it's like some workflow thing, you can always rerun it. You can always rerun this job, and when you rerun it, there's like a check, enable debug logging, and it will get even more verbose, and you can see what exactly failed. So this is really helpful when you're setting like GitHub Actions. Yeah, so this is how a cursor run looks. Let's see a codex one. You can see this one is skipped, right? These are skipped because like, it was not using that label. And then you can see that this one took 2 minutes. 2 minutes, 39 seconds. The actual code review, 2 minutes, 23. And it's pretty much the same thing. This is the configuration. And then it spits out some more information. This is written by the agent as it went through all of the prompt and everything. And then you can see the commands that it run. It's a little bit more detailed in what it did. But that doesn't mean you can't make like cursor say the same things. It's just this one by default speaks a lot more. And I think this is kind of GPT-5 way of talking a lot, right? Yeah, so you can actually see all the commands. You can see the code that it ran with. And yeah, at the end, you'll have some conclusion. And the nice thing about it is it also tells you the cost. So you can see like it's kind of various condition here, so it's intermingled, but you can see that it used 60K tokens for this code review, which is not a lot, to be honest. And decent information got out of it. So, yeah. Let me see what else. If you have any other questions, yes.
Cristi, I have a question.
Sure.
You said about GPT-5 being a good code reviewer. I'm interested because I see I read a lot about people finding preferences for certain models. I'm interested to learn how you set on that preference to GPT-5 versus like how much did you use it, what patterns did you look for, and what you'd expect to say if a new Claude model, for example, would change your opinion on it.
Yeah, of course. So what are the differences between models and how we can choose a model, right? Well, I've been working with Cursor for maybe 6 months now. So I've been using a lot of these models in comparison. The Cursor documentation also has a comparison for the models and their preference and what their use will be. In my opinion, Claude is really good at generating code. When it actually analyzes code, I don't see like such a big difference between it or GPT-5. GPT-5 and 5.1 are really good for like analyzing things, summarizing things. So I think they're kind of more inclined into this, whereas Claude, I think it's more inclined into generating code. So one thing that I wanted to do is not let Claude review code that I pushed using Claude, right? Because I'm not gaining a lot of things. Yeah, that was one of the reasons. But then using GPT-5 outside of Cursor, like using Codex, the CLI, turns out that it's not that expensive. It's really cheap. So that was another thing. Cursor is really expensive, and Cursor does a lot of great things. I actually like it a lot for generating code. The rule system, for example, the context compression that it does. So with Cursor, like as you're nearing the context window, it will actually start compressing, summarizing everything, and like sometimes that works fine. Some other times it misses a lot of important information, but most of the time it works. This is not something that all models have, but yeah, for this situation, I believe like GPT-5 does a very good job.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
What about DeepSeek?
No, I haven't tried it. But you have to keep in mind that with these models, each company has like security policies and privacy concerns and all of that stuff. So you need to be aware of what you're using for your like own personal projects and to learn stuff and take them to the limit. Yeah, you could use whatever you want, but when you go into your company computer, things change a bit. There are valid concerns. Valid concerns.
By the way, that rule that you had allow list and deny.
Yeah.
When you have the allow list, is it just these commands that are allowed, or it's?
Yeah. Once you have that file, that CLI.json, and just go back to it.
So you can define just the allow list, and it will actually deny everything else.
Yes, yes. I think the deny is kind of, deny is the most restrictive. But also, if you don't allow something, it would kind of debate if it's allowed or not. But if you deny it, it's like a hard no. Don't use this command or anything like in that template. But allow will definitely green flag and it will use it all the time. Not allow, not deny, gray area. You don't know.
Yeah, maybe in an interactive session, it may ask it.
Probably, yeah, probably. But this is more useful because in an interactive session you can it will ask you, you can reply, you can configure it yourself. But this is more useful when you run it headless and you don't have any interaction, so you can't actually allow or deny any interaction.
Yeah.
You have just one shot of telling it what to do or what not to do.
I have one question regarding the, you said you were using call the logs, push actually. Do you guys use the bug bot that they provide that's specific for code review?
So you're asking if we use the bug bot?
Yes.
So bug bot, yeah, bug bot is a really interesting one, and thanks for bringing it up. It's actually, Cursor has developed this automatic code review tool that does pretty much what I've done here. But it's more expensive. But the reason why it's more expensive is it's seat-based. So every seat of for this you could have like an API key with limitless tokens and whatnot. But for BugBot you need to have like seats, and each seat is like $40 or something. The cool thing about it is that it runs 4 or 5 reviews in parallel using different models, and then they ask each model to vote the other model's review. And then it kind of like the best review wins and gets into your PR. So it's really cool. I haven't used it in production because again, it's expensive and the company didn't allow it. It's debatable. I mean, what's a great code review and what's not a great one? Because it's like, again, the baseline is human code review. So I think something like this does a very good job at complementing, and maybe it does like 70% of the code reviewer's job. I often just see that it has some comments there, I read them, see if they're fixed or not. If it's rejected, I ask questions why, stuff like that. So it does take a lot of work. But yeah, BugBot is really cool if you can afford it. Yeah. Okay. Let me just go really quick through this. Yeah, I think we covered pretty much of it. Conclusions, I would say that large PRs again, degraded quality on the review. Inconsistent findings is another thing, they're not very good at reproducing the same thing. Running the review the second time, it might say different things. It's hard to enforce this kind of deterministic behavior, right? They cannot fully replace domain knowledge. Most likely you will still need a human reviewer to actually make sure that things make sense there. And the occasional hallucinations in the suggestions, that's something that we all see. I also have some next steps to improve these prompts, and the rules again are the key for this kind of thing. Optimize cost by detecting changes between commits. Maybe you don't need to run for a simple change or something. Maybe you can automate a script to just check a small part in your log file or something. You don't need to run a whole review session just for a one-line change. And yeah, maybe in the future enable blocking review. They find big issues to reject the PR, so nobody can go through until they fix it. And maybe enable interaction, I mentioned Copilot. If you could ask Copilot to do kind of things, even to create comments for you and stuff like that. If we have any other questions, I'm not sure how we stay on the time.
Yeah, I think we should finish up now.
Okay. So thank you so much. If you have any questions,